Have you ever stepped into a place and felt everyone staring, waiting for you to mess up? That's what Maya Torres felt during her first week at La Perla, the fanciest restaurant in Cresthaven, a small town by the sea. Maya was 23, wearing a plain white shirt and a red apron, her dark hair tied back in a loose braid. She wasn't like the other waitresses, who moved quietly, heads down, scared to make a mistake. Maya had a spark, a lightness from her old days as a comedian, though nobody here knew that. She hummed as she carried trays, smiling, even when people stared. La Perla was the town's hot spot, with shiny wood tables and bright chandeliers. Rich people came to show off. That night, the place was full, businessmen, their wives in sparkly dresses, and a few visitors chasing Cresthaven's fancy vibe. At the center was Eleanor Prescott, in her late 40s, with sharp cheekbones and blonde hair pulled tight. Her green necklace shone under the lights. Eleanor was married to Victor Prescott, a real estate big shot who owned half the town. She scared everyone. Her voice was sharp, her eyes cold. Waiters whispered about her fits, how she could get you fired with one word. Tonight, she sat at a big table with 6 guests, all laughing loud at her stories, trying to keep her happy. Maya walked up with a tray of food, shrimp and crab cakes, still warm. She set them down carefully, her hands steady even though her stomach was tight. Eleanor didn't look at her, just kept talking about a bad yacht party. "The service here is getting worse," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "This new girl, what's her name? She's so slow. Look at her, tripping over herself." Her guests laughed, their eyes on Maya, who kept smiling, though her face felt hot. "She's trying, I guess," a guy in a blue suit said, leaning back with a grin. "Not everyone's made for this place." The others nodded, laughing like they shared a secret. Maya straightened up, brushed her hair back, and kept working, setting plates at another table. But Eleanor's voice followed. "Trying isn't enough. If I wanted bad service, I'd go to a cheap diner." From behind the bar, Marco Delgado, the manager, watched. He was a short guy with kind eyes, always calming things down when Eleanor got mean. He looked at Maya and nodded, like he was saying, "Keep going." Maya took a deep breath, thinking of her old life, on stage with a microphone, turning rude comments into jokes. She wasn't going to let Eleanor shake her. When Maya came back with a water pitcher, Eleanor's table got louder. A woman in a red dress waved her empty glass. "Do we have to beg for a refill?" she said. Maya filled it fast, keeping her smile. Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes narrow. "You're new, right? What's your name?" "Maya," she said, her voice clear but soft. "Maya Torres." Eleanor raised an eyebrow, her lips curling. "Maya Torres. Maybe you should try an easier job. This place isn't for newbies." The table laughed again, the sound grating on Maya's nerves. She felt the other waitresses watching, waiting for her to break. Even Victor Prescott, sitting quietly next to Eleanor, looked up. He was older, maybe 50, calm in a way that didn't match his wife's sharpness. He didn't say anything, just drank his wine. Maya set the pitcher down, her mind racing. She could stay quiet, nod, and walk away. That's what everyone else did. But that wasn't her. She'd spent years on stage, turning insults into laughs, and Eleanor's words lit something in her. She tilted her head, her smile growing. "You know, Mrs. Prescott, I'm new, but I learned fast. Give me a week, and I'll have this place running so smooth, you'll think I made waitressing up." The table went quiet. The guy in the blue suit coughed into his napkin. Eleanor froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. The whole restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Then a woman with pearl earrings gave a nervous laugh. "She's got guts," she said, looking at Eleanor, waiting for her to react. Eleanor didn't laugh. She put her fork down, slow and careful. "Guts," she said, her voice low like a warning. "That's cute. But guts don't fix bad service. The shrimp is cold. Get me a new one." She pushed the plate at Maya, her eyes daring her to talk back. Maya didn't back down. She picked up the plate, still smiling. "Cold shrimp? My mistake. I'll get you a new one, hot enough to make you think you're back on that yacht." A few guests laughed, surprised, but Eleanor's face stayed hard, her lips tight. Maya turned and walked to the kitchen, her braid bouncing. She felt Eleanor's stare but didn't look back. In the kitchen, the heat hit her, with cooks shouting and pans banging. Marco was there, leaning on the counter, wiping his hands. "You good?" he asked quietly. Maya set the plate down, her smile fading for a second. "She's tough, huh?" Marco chuckled. "Eleanor? She's the boss around here. Don't take it personal. She's hard on everyone." "I'm not everyone," Maya said, her eyes bright. She grabbed a new plate of shrimp from a cook, who looked at her curiously. "She wants hot? I'll give her hot." Back in the dining room, the noise was back, but Eleanor's table was still tense, her guests sneaking looks at her. Maya set the new plate down in front of Eleanor, smooth and confident. "Fresh from the kitchen, Mrs. Prescott. Hot enough to warm up that ice in your glass." Eleanor stared at the plate, then at Maya, her face blank. "Cute," she said again, her voice sharper now, like she was testing her. "You think you're funny, don't you?" Maya didn't hesitate. "Funny enough to keep this job, I hope. Need anything else?" Her voice was light, but her eyes held Eleanor's, steady and fearless. Eleanor leaned back, tapping her fingers on the table. "We'll see," she said, her voice cold but softer, like she was holding something back. The guests shifted, feeling the tension, but nobody spoke. Victor watched, his face calm, though his eyes stayed on Maya a little longer. The dining room at La Perla hummed with the clatter of plates and the murmur of voices, but a heavy silence hung over Eleanor Prescott's table. Eleanor sat back, her fingers tapping the edge of her wineglass, her sharp eyes fixed on Maya Torres. Maya stood firm, her red apron slightly creased, her loose braids swaying as she met Eleanor's gaze with a steady smile. The guests around the table shifted in their seats, their earlier laughter gone, waiting for Eleanor to strike back. Victor Prescott, Eleanor's husband, sipped his wine, his calm face giving nothing away as he glanced between his wife and the young waitress who just tossed her words back at her. "Well," Eleanor said, her voice cutting through the quiet, slow and deliberate. "If you're done playing comedian, maybe you can do your job properly." Maya's smile didn't falter. "On it, Mrs. Prescott. Hope the shrimp's hot enough now." She turned, her steps light but sure, heading toward the kitchen. Her braid bounced and a few heads turned to watch her go. At a nearby table, an older man in a gray jacket leaned toward his wife, muttering, "That girl's got guts." The woman nodded, her eyes following Maya with a mix of curiosity and amusement. In the kitchen, the air was thick with heat and the clang of pots. Maya set her tray down, letting out a long breath. The cooks were too busy to notice, shouting orders over sizzling pans. Marco Delgado, the manager, stood by the counter, wiping his hands on a towel. His kind eyes crinkled as he looked at Maya. "You're stirring the pot out there," he said, his voice low but warm. "Eleanor's not used to anyone talking back." Maya grabbed a tray of drinks for another table, shrugging. "I'm not trying to start a fight, Marco, but I'm not gonna let her push me around." Her eyes sparkled, a hint of her old comedian days shining through. "She's not as scary as everyone thinks." Marco chuckled, shaking his head. "Keep that fire. Just don't be shocked if she pushes harder." He nodded toward the dining room. "Go on. You're holding your own." Back in the dining room, Maya wove through the tables, her smile easy, her hands quick as she poured water and cleared plates. Eleanor's table was quieter now, the guests eating, their eyes darting between their plates and Maya. Eleanor picked at her food, her face tight, like she was chewing on something bitter. Victor leaned toward her, murmuring something soft, but she brushed him off with a quick wave of her hand. The other waitresses kept their heads down, moving like shadows, but Maya could feel their glances, curious, maybe even a little impressed. As the night went on, Maya's confidence grew. She stopped at a table with a young couple, joking about the dessert menu being sweeter than their date. They laughed, their voices carrying and heads turned. A woman at another table waved her over, smiling. "You're new, right? Keep that energy. This place needs it." Maya grinned, thanking her, and caught Victor's eye from Eleanor's table. His face was calm, but there was a flicker of something, maybe respect. Eleanor, though, was different. Her sharp comments had faded, and she sat quieter, her eyes tracking Maya's every move. When Maya laughed or tossed out a quick quip, Eleanor's lips pressed tighter, but she didn't snap back. The guests at her table weren't fawning over her anymore. They were watching Maya, smiling when she passed, their chatter lighter. One guest, the man in the blue suit from earlier, called out as Maya cleared a plate. "Hey Maya, you ever try stand-up? You've got a sharp tongue." Maya paused, balancing the tray on one hand. "Maybe once or twice," she said, winking. "But this gig's got better tips." The table laughed, and even Victor's mouth twitched into a small smile. Eleanor's fork stopped midair, her eyes narrowing, but she said nothing. Marco, watching from the bar, grinned to himself. He polished a glass, muttering, "She's winning them over." The dining room felt different, lighter, like Maya's warmth was spreading. The other waitresses started to relax, their shoulders loosening as they passed her. One, a shy girl named Sarah, whispered, "You're nuts, but I like it." The real turning point came a week later at La Perla's annual charity auction. The restaurant was packed, every table filled with Cresthaven's richest. Men in tuxedos, women in shimmering gowns, all there to bid and be seen. The auction was a big deal, sponsored by Victor's real estate company, and Eleanor always used it to flex her power, bidding high and making sure everyone noticed. Tonight, though, Maya was on the floor, her red apron standing out against the fancy crowd, her quick wit and easy smile pulling eyes her way. During a break in the bidding, as the auctioneer stepped away, Maya was clearing glasses when a guest, a loud man in a pinstripe suit, knocked over his drink, red wine splashing across the floor. The room went quiet, all eyes on the mess. Eleanor, standing near the auction table with a champagne glass, smirked. "Well, Maya, here's your moment. Clean it up." The crowd waited, expecting Maya to shrink. Instead, she grabbed a towel, dropped to one knee, and looked up with a grin. "No worries, folks, I've got this. If I can handle a spill, I might just bid on that fancy lamp up there myself." The room erupted in laughter, the auctioneer chuckling from his podium. The man in the pinstripe suit laughed, slapping Maya's shoulder. "You're a keeper, kid." Eleanor's smirk vanished. She sipped her champagne, her eyes locked on Maya, who was back on her feet, wiping her hands on her apron. The crowd was still laughing, their focus on Maya now, not Eleanor. Victor, standing nearby, watched his wife, his face soft but curious, like he was seeing something new. Marco, behind the bar, leaned toward another waitress and whispered, "She's taking over." As the auction continued, Maya kept the room alive. She tossed out quick jokes while serving drinks, making the crowd smile. When a bidder hesitated over a painting, she leaned in and said, "Come on, it's got more colors than my apron. That's worth a bid." The room laughed again, and the bidder raised his paddle, grinning. Eleanor bid on a few items, her voice loud as always, but it didn't land the same. People were talking about Maya, her humor, her ease, the way she didn't bow to the pressure. By the end of the night, Eleanor was quieter than anyone had seen her. She stood by the auction table, her champagne glass empty, watching Maya move through the crowd. Guests were relaxed, smiling, some stopping to chat with Maya. Victor stepped up beside his wife, resting a hand on her arm. "She's got something special," he said quietly. Eleanor didn't answer right away. Her eyes stayed on Maya, who was laughing with a group of guests, her braid bouncing as she gestured. For a moment, Eleanor's face softened, just a touch, like something was shifting inside her. She set her glass down, her fingers lingering on the stem. "Maybe," she said, her voice low, almost to herself. The room buzzed around her, but for the first time, she wasn't the one everyone noticed. Maya was. The charity auction at La Perla was winding down, the clatter of glasses and hum of voices fading as guests began to drift toward the exits. Eleanor Prescott stood by the auction table, her empty champagne glass clutched tightly, her sharp eyes locked on Maya Torres across the room. Maya, in her bright red apron, stood out against the crowd of tuxedos and glittering gowns, laughing with a group of guests who leaned in, smiling at her quick wit. Eleanor's face, usually hard and commanding, showed something new, a flicker of doubt, maybe even admiration. Victor Prescott, her husband, stood beside her, his hand resting lightly on her arm, his voice soft. "She's something, isn't she?" Eleanor didn't respond right away, her gaze fixed on Maya, her fingers tightening on the glass stem. "Maybe," she said finally, her voice so low it almost vanished in the room's noise. The next evening, La Perla was quieter, with only a handful of tables filled by the usual dinner crowd. Maya worked her shift, her white shirt slightly creased from hours of running plates, her loose braid fraying at the edges. Eleanor walked in alone, no entourage, no Victor, just her in a simple black dress, no fancy jewelry to catch the light. The other waitresses froze, their eyes darting to Maya, expecting a storm. Eleanor took a small table by the window, overlooking Cresthaven's dark, wave-tossed shore. Her posture was stiff but not as sharp as usual, like she was holding herself differently. Maya noticed, her stomach tightening, but she walked over, her smile steady. "Evening, Mrs. Prescott. Just you tonight?" Eleanor looked up, her eyes meeting Maya's without their usual edge. "Yes," she said, her voice even, almost gentle. "Just me." She paused, her fingers smoothing the tablecloth, then added, "Can we talk? After your shift?" It wasn't her typical command. It sounded like a question, hesitant, almost vulnerable. Maya blinked, thrown off, but nodded. "Sure. I'm done at 9. At 9, Maya stepped outside La Perla, still in her red apron, wiping her hands on it as the cool sea breeze hit her. Eleanor was waiting on the front steps, the glow of Cresthaven's streetlights casting soft shadows across her face. The ocean murmured in the distance, a steady rhythm against the quiet town. Maya leaned against the railing, her tone light but curious. "So, what's up?" Eleanor took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "I owe you an apology," she said, the words coming slow, like they were hard to push out. "I was harsh. I judged you before I knew you." Maya's mouth opened but no quick comeback came. She wasn't ready for this from Eleanor. Eleanor kept going, her voice softer now. "Last night at the auction, I saw how you handled the room. You didn't just serve tables, you made people feel alive. I don't do that. I make them afraid." Maya shifted, her comedian instincts itching for a joke to break the tension, but she held back. "I just try to keep things light," she said finally. "People like to laugh. It makes the night go easier." Eleanor nodded, her eyes dropping to the ground. "I don't know how to do that, but I want to try." She looked up, her face softer than Maya had ever seen, almost uncertain. "There's a community dinner next week, for the town's food bank. Victor and I usually just send money, but I want to do more. I want to help, really help. Will you work with me on it?" Maya's eyebrows shot up, and a surprised laugh slipped out. "You want me to help plan a dinner?" She shook her head, not mean, just caught off guard. "I'm just a waitress, Mrs. Prescott." "Eleanor," she corrected, a small smile breaking through, tentative but real. "And you're not just anything. You've got this town talking, Maya. They listen to you, they like you. I want them to see me differently, not as someone to fear, but as someone who can do something good." Maya studied her, waiting for the catch, but Eleanor's eyes were steady, sincere. The comedian in her wanted to test the moment with a quip, but she saw something real in Eleanor's face. "Okay," Maya said, nodding slowly. "Let's do it. But I'm warning you, I'm not fancy. It's gonna be real food, real people, and probably some terrible jokes." Eleanor's smile grew, just a fraction. "I can handle that." The next week, La Perla's back room was transformed for the community dinner. Long tables were covered with plain white cloths, and the air was thick with the smell of roasted chicken, creamy mashed potatoes, and warm dinner rolls. Maya and Eleanor worked side by side, an unlikely pair. Maya moved with her usual ease, directing the kitchen staff with a grin, tossing out jokes to keep them going. "Come on, Joe, stir that gravy like it's your big break," she called, making the cook chuckle as he whisked faster. Eleanor was nearby, setting out plates, her hands a little clumsy but careful, like she was learning as she went. Victor was there, too, rolling up his sleeves to carry trays of bread, his quiet presence steady and calm. Marco Delgado, the manager, watched from the side, his arms crossed, a grin on his face. "Never thought I'd see Eleanor Prescott dishing out potatoes," he muttered to a cook, who nodded wide-eyed. The townspeople arrived in waves, families with kids tugging at their hands, shop owners in worn jackets, even some of La Perla's wealthy regulars, looking out of place but curious. They all sat together, the usual Cresthaven divides blurring. Maya moved through the crowd, her apron swapped for a clean white shirt, her braid neat for once. She knelt by a table of kids, pretending to juggle rolls until they giggled, their parents smiling. "Don't drop those or I'm making you clean it up," she teased, winking at a boy who laughed so hard he nearly spilled his juice. Eleanor followed her lead, quieter but trying. She handed out plates, her smile small but genuine. When a little girl knocked over her juice, Eleanor knelt down, wiping it up with a napkin, no hint of her old sharpness. The girl's mom, a tired-looking woman in a faded sweater, thanked her, surprised. "Didn't expect that from you, Mrs. Prescott," she said softly. Eleanor paused, then smiled. "I'm learning," she said, her voice low but warm. The room buzzed with life, the kind Cresthaven hadn't seen in a long time. People talked across tables, sharing stories about their shops, their kids, their lives. A fisherman laughed with a real estate agent, a rare sight in a town where wealth usually drew hard lines. Maya kept the energy up, tossing out one-liners as she refilled water pitchers. "If the chicken's too good, blame the cooks, they're showing off tonight," she called, earning a cheer from the kitchen. Eleanor watched, her movements more confident now, like she was finding her place. As the night wound down, the tables were mostly empty, plates cleared, and the crowd was still talking, reluctant to leave. A shop owner, an older man with a gray beard, stood up, raising a glass of water. "To Maya and Eleanor," he said, his voice carrying across the room. "For bringing us all together like this." The crowd clapped, some cheering, their voices warm and loud. Maya grinned, nudging Eleanor, who looked stunned, her eyes bright with something like pride. Victor squeezed his wife's hand, his smile quiet but full of warmth. As people started to leave, Marco pulled Maya aside, handing her a small envelope. "From the staff," he said, his eyes crinkling. "A little something to say thanks. You're shaking things up, kid." Inside was a card, signed by every worker at La Perla, with a gift card to a local coffee shop. Maya laughed, her throat tight. "Didn't see this coming," she said, tucking it in her pocket. "Thanks, Marco." Across the room, Eleanor was talking to a group of townspeople, asking about their businesses, their families, her voice soft but genuine. They answered not with the usual fear, but with warmth, like they were seeing her for the first time. One woman, a baker, touched Eleanor's arm and said, "You should come by the shop sometime. I'll save you a loaf." Eleanor nodded, her smile real, not forced. Victor stood nearby, watching, his calm presence grounding her. Cresthaven felt different now, lighter, like the walls between people were starting to crack. Maya had come to town as an outsider, a former comedian trying to start over, but tonight, she was part of something bigger. And Eleanor, who'd spent years ruling with fear, was stepping into something new, something human. The dinner was over, but the feeling lingered, a quiet promise that the town could change, just like they had. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, hit that like button, share it with someone who loves a good twist, and subscribe for more cinematic tales that hit you right in the heart. Let us know in the comments where you're watching from.